probably familiar with called PLCs. But I also want to show you how that word lends itself to the kids that I like to refer to as emergent bilinguals, right? The rest of the world calls them English learners. By the way, if you've never seen what an English learner looks like all grown up, take a picture. This is what we look like right here. And notice that I'm speaking in English, yes? So it worked. Pero también les puedo dar esta plática completamente en español, sin problema, because I never lost my first language. So can we agree that being bilingual, biliterate today is an asset, not a deficit, right? So here's the question, right? And so we got fans right here, thank you. But here's the question. Why does our system view them as deficits instead of assets? And that's the kind of conversation we got to get into today. So let's begin with embracing this important principle first, right? As soon as I put it on the screen, I want everyone to say it in unison. Ready? On three. 1, 2, 3. Say it.
Clarity precedes competence.
So before we can be competent in something, we need clarity. And clarity means that we're going to have to make sure we're on the same page so that we can move forward in this afternoon of learning. Now, I'm not going to be a presenter today. I want to be a teacher. And if I'm going to be an effective teacher, then you, the students in this scenario, are going to have to engage with me, and we're going to need to make sure we have clarity. Now, here's where I want to begin with clarity, okay? Is it true that educators in Elkhart, Indiana have embraced the PLC process in an effort to ensure high levels of learning for all students? And what does it mean that your education community has embraced becoming a professional learning community? So, I want you to pretend for a moment that I go to your school, and I am invited to spend a day with the amazing people that work in your schools. And when I get there, I go around asking people, what is this thing PLC that all of you have embraced? Now let's be clear, clarity precedes competence. I want you to be as honest as possible here. What is it that I hear from people that maybe are not present here today? If I go to your school and ask 10 different people, what is this thing called PLC? What would be the number one response I hear? Would I hear the same response from all people? Or would I hear 10 different responses around what this acronym represents? Because for the last 12 years, I've been doing this full time. I'm no longer at a site. Today I woke up in Indiana. Tomorrow I wake up in Arkansas. Next week I wake up in Texas. And this is my life today. And I love meeting people of your caliber no matter where I go. But I'm starting to notice that we don't have clarity around this work. So turn to someone next to you, behind you, in front of you, and engage in this conversation for about a minute or two. What's the number one answer I hear at your school when I ask people, what is this PLC process that you've all embraced? Ready? Go. We're also live streaming this to some folks, so hello folks that are watching from far away. Happy to have you here. Now, If we had time, I'd want to hear from you, but we're down to, I am not going to shortchange you from leaving at 3 because you've had a long day already. In most places where I go, the number one answer I hear when this question is asked is it's a meeting we have once a week. Okay? Some of you are agreeing with that. I go to many places and they ask, what is a PLC? I also hear this one. It's something the district makes us do. Right? And so here's the thing. Of all my years of working in schools, because I've been at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels as a teacher and an administrator, I can tell you that the game changer for us was embracing the true meaning of this. Right? So let me ask you this. If I went to your schools and I asked people what a PLC is, would they do this? Would they say, Dr. Cruz, you see, our school becomes a PLC when we, the professional educators, engage in this ongoing process of collaboration. And this collaboration is different than collaboration. This collaboration happens once a week in these like recurring cycles of collective inquiry where the educators are looking at data to determine which kids learned, which ones didn't, and which instructional practice proved to be the most effective. And then we collectively take action to help all kids learn at high levels. Would they say that? No. They wouldn't say that? Because my friends, listen here. That's what it is. Those of you that are listening in and taking notes, I appreciate you so much for taking notes. I'd like you to write this down, please. Right? And if you don't have paper and pen, take out your phone. There's a note section somewhere in there. I want you to make sure that you understand that PLC is both a noun and a verb. Let me begin first and foremost with what it is. It's what your school is trying to become. Your school is trying to become a professional learning community. And in a professional learning community, professional educators, don't be calling us amateurs, engage in an ongoing, never-ending, there is no finish line process of collaboration. Now, do you all remember the first time you ever heard the word collaboration? Let me remind you, Vanilla Ice, 1990. Young people, you're about to be impressed by us older people. Watch this. Ready? All right, people around the 1990, you finish the sentence for me. Stop.
Collaborate and listen.
That's how we used to rap, young people. Thank you, Vanilla Ice, for introducing us to collaboration. But listen here, you missed it. Rick the Four, also known as Ricardo de Cuatro, used to always say, there's a difference between collaboration and collaboration. 90% of the schools I visit are collaborating. They're good people, let me be clear. They love kids, and they want what's best for kids. But there's a difference between collaboration and collaboration. When teams function around the notion of collaboration, they are going to be engaged in these recurring cycles of collective inquiry. What does that mean? That once a week, for at least 45 minutes to an hour, teams of teachers come together and they look at data to determine what? Which kids are learning, which ones are not, and which of our instructional strategies is proving to be most effective. They're not afraid to have that conversation. They're not afraid to say, hey, members of my team, what did you do that produced learning? Because my kids didn't learn as much as yours. So teach me what you did. Veterans are teaching new teachers, but new teachers are teaching veterans. Because that happens too. But the most important thing is that once they're done discussing and analyzing, everybody do it with me. Come on, do it with me. Go like this. Everyone's got to do it, even cool people. Let's go. Listen to me. You take action. Give me some take action. Now, let me ask you something. That is called, have you heard of this acronym? RTI. Okay, on 3, you all tell me what RTI stands for. Ready? 1, 2, 3. No! It doesn't mean response to intervention. Write this down right now. Everybody, write it down. It stands for responsible teachers intervening. That's what it means. Now, why does it mean responsible teachers intervening? Have you noticed that everyone loves intervention when they don't have to do it? I love RTI. Where should we send these children to be fixed? No. In the PLC process, we, the professional educators, are going to respond. Can you imagine going to the doctor's office and the doctor saying, yeah, it doesn't look good, Luis. I hope someone fixes that. I'd look at the doctor like, wait a minute, you're the doctor. You're supposed to help me. So, RTI no longer, for my friends in Elkhart, Indiana, is going to mean response to intervention. I don't think that's even grammatically correct. It's going to be responsible teachers intervening. Why? We want all kids learning at high levels. Now, in your notes, I need to redefine 2 terms. The first one is high levels of learning. In 2023 and beyond, this is what high levels of learning means. Because you ask 20 different good, hardworking people, what is high levels of learning? They'll give you 20 different answers. Here's what it means within the concept of PLC. Ready? It means grade level or higher. We need to produce collectively grade levels or higher. Tell me, wouldn't it be a beautiful thing if at the beginning of the year, teachers were arguing, darn, they came in too high. Can you imagine that? That would be a beautiful argument to have, yes or no? But usually we don't hear that. What do we hear? They came in too low. We need to create a system that produces grade level or higher by the end of each year. For all kids. Okay, what's our new definition of all? Here is the definition of all. Ready? Any child who will one day be an independent adult. Any child who's going to be an independent adult needs to leave our schools in Elkhart, Indiana at grade level or higher. Now, based on what I've learned about you, you have a whole lot of kids in your community that we call Title I kids, but I like to call stuck in the cycle of poverty kids. Raise your hands if those are your clients, right? Now, can we agree that they're going to be independent adults one day? Yes or no? Yes. So guess what? They need to walk out of our schools at grade level higher. It is not good enough to say this anymore. We used to say this all the time. We want children working to the best of their potential. It doesn't work in 2023. They need grade level or higher. Do you have these children? Children with IEPs in your school? Yes or no? Where are you amazing special ed teachers? Are you in here? Please give them some love. Special ed teachers. Special ed teachers will tell you that the vast majority of their kids with IEPs are going to be independent adults. My good friend Mike Matos always says, there's no such thing as modified rent or accommodated bills. They're going to have to pay rent and bills like everyone else. Now, how these amazing people get them there can look different with accommodations and modifications. EL kids are going to be independent adults. Now, do we have kids that are not going to be independent adults? Possibly. Kids with severe mental disabilities, like a grandson that I have, who's on the extreme spectrum of autism. My little Luca might not be an independent adult one day. So for those kids, we want to the best of their ability. But for all my other grandkids, I have a total of 5. The other 4 are going to be independent adults. I need them learning at grade level or higher. This is what we are going to have to produce. Now, when people ask me, Luis, what do you do for a living? I do not say, I teach people how to become a PLC. I don't say, I teach people RTI. Here's what I say, ready? I teach people, mostly in North America, public school educators, to redesign a public school system never designed to generate high levels of learning for all of the students currently present in their schools. So here's what I need to tell you. If you are serious about embracing the PLC process, you are committing to redesigning a system that was never created for all kids, any child who's going to be an independent adult, learning at high levels, grade level or higher. That is not the system that we've inherited, but it's the one that we need in 2023 and beyond. And I'll get to that in just a moment. So, let me begin by being very clear. Your school becomes a professional learning community when you, the public school educators, embrace this ongoing, never-ending process of collaboration. And this collaboration is going to happen in these recurring cycles of collective inquiry, whereby you are continuously, all year long, looking for which kids got it, which kids didn't, and what are we going to do about this? And you do this because in 2023 and beyond, we need all kids learning at high levels. Now, I'm not just going to leave it there. Let's create some context. Context is very important because I don't want to just leave you hanging there. I want to explain to you why in 2023 and beyond, we need all kids learning at high levels. And I want to prove to you that our system was never designed for this. Why is context important? Because Michael Ventura says this: without context, a piece of information is just a dot. It floats in your brain with a lot of other dots, and it doesn't mean a darn thing. Context is what? Knowledge is information in context connecting the dots. So let's begin with this question. I'm going to ask you a little bit of a, let's turn this into a Jeopardy question. Ready? I'm going to give you the statement. You give me the answer. Ready? Consider the father of the public education system in the United States. So turn to someone next to you, 10 seconds. What is the Jeopardy answer? All right, 10 seconds are up. Talk to me. The answer is, who is? John Dewey. John, good try, but no, not the correct answer. Nobody Googled it? Who is? Ready? Horace Mann. That's right. I know. Hey, but if you're ever on Jeopardy, I hooked you up, okay? Now, here's what I'm saying. We should be grateful to Horace Mann. Horace Mann had this idea, and others contributed, like John Dewey, to creating what we have today in 2023 as a public school system. But here's a question I have for you. Back in 1830, when the common school was introduced to the United States, could Horace Mann have imagined that educators in public schools across our nation today would aim to serve a new definition of all within the context of a global economy? Now, in our very divided world today, can we agree that the definition of all in 1830 was very different than the definition of all today? Ladies in the audience, don't kill the messenger. You were not part of the original blueprint. People that look like me, that look like you, and you were not part of the original blueprint. And if you were a white male who did not own land, you were not part of the original blueprint. This is not politics, this is called history. Okay? Now, having said that, global economy was not in existence back in 1830. We had an agricultural economy, followed by an industrial economy. What do those economies need to thrive? Do they need thinkers or do they need workers? Workers. So back in like 1850, I can skip 5th grade and go work. And I'd be okay, because those economies needed workers. We don't have a majority agricultural or industrial anymore. Can we agree on this? Not all kids have to go to college to be successful. Yes. Absolutely. But guess what they need? Very similar skill sets. They have to be able to comprehend informational text. They have to problem solve. They have to be critical thinkers. I have a nephew that we have a very small Latino family. It's about 800 of us that get together on Saturdays for breakfast at my house, right? Now get this. The aunts were crying one day. Why are you all crying? Ivan no quiere ir al colegio, doesn't want to go to college. My nephew. I said, Ivan, what do you want to do? He goes, Tío, I want to be an electrician. And I looked at the aunts that were crying. I said, let him be an electrician. I had to convince them. So what do educators do at gatherings? I broke out with a PowerPoint. Look. This is how much electricians make. And they were like, oh, Ivan! So my nephew today is an electrician. And he has to read informational text. He has to problem solve. He has to collaborate with others. He has to write reports after each job. The same skill sets that his sister needed when she went to nursing school, he needs. So we live in a world today where if kids don't have these skills, they're not going to be successful. So here's the deal, my friends. Your students are these kids right here. This is the percentage from your community. This is not my community. I'm from Los Angeles, California. We didn't have 16.9% ELs. We had 53% ELs. We didn't have 57.6% of our kids stuck in the cycle of poverty. It was more like 98%. And I never found the remaining 2%, so I think the district was off, right? So here's the deal, my friends. If we're going to make sure that these kids that we love are successful, we're going to have to address the system. So let me get old school with you on it for a minute. I'm going to go old school with you. I'm going to introduce you to a scholar named Arsenio Hall. See, sister, right here. You and I right here. See, I get excited when people go, whoa. Young people are confused right now. I'm like, look at the young people. They're like, what is this going on? That's our version of Jimmy Fallon, young people. Okay. So Arsenio Hall was a late night talk show host that had a segment called Things That Make You Go, give it to me now, things that make you go, yeah, right? I'm going to give you 3 things that might make you go, Ready? Here we go. Here's the first one. What if schools across our country have hard-working public school educators who on a daily basis strive to provide all students with opportunities to learn at high levels, but are missing the right system? What if schools serving English learners never really had the necessary infrastructure, system, to ensure high levels of learning? What if schools serving English learners are not stuck in an achievement gap, but instead are more victims of an opportunity gap, generated by hardworking, well-intentioned educators in systematically flawed schools? Am I making you think? I can't stand it. Thank you. I can't stand it when people assume that we're not hardworking. Raise your hands if you have surpassed your contractual hours for the next decade this year. Thank you. Raise your hands if you use money from your own paycheck to do things for your classroom. Everybody. This is not about you need to work harder. This is not about you have to care more. You already do. This is about we don't have the right system that allows us to be successful with these kids. So here's what I'm saying to you. When your school becomes a PLC, you are embracing, redesigning a system that will match the hard work you bring every day. Does that make sense? So my friends, here's the deal. What is a system? So you're back on Jeopardy, and you have to define a system. Now earlier today, they said a system was a set of procedures, the steps you take. And here's the best definition of a system. Ready? Let's keep it simple. A set of connected things or parts forming a complex whole. So here's what I'm saying to you. What if we have the right people, but the wrong system? When you ask people, why did you join this profession? Here's what you'll never hear. For the money. I have never met someone in our profession who said, I was so passionate about state test scores, I had to do it. You meet people that say what? I love kids. I want to work with the future of tomorrow. I get a natural high when a kid stuck in the cycle of poverty years later is no longer in the cycle of poverty. That's why we joined the profession. So don't tell me we have the wrong people. We have the right people, but we have the wrong set of connected things that help us achieve our goal. So what are the parts of a system? Ready? Policies, practices, procedures. What if we have policies that are counter to all kids learning at high level? Let me give you an example. Middle school, principal. This was our discipline policy. Ready? If you ditch school, we suspend you for 3 days. How does that even make sense? So we had a mission statement that said what? All kids will learn at high levels, but we had a policy that was counter that. Does that make sense? Now, I am not saying, right away people assume, oh, we're supposed to just let kids. No, of course they need a punishment. But it shouldn't be you don't have to come to school. Right?
That's right.
What if we have practices? Like our high school had a fascinating practice. Ready? Here it is. Ready? Veteran math teachers. We teach the higher level math courses. New teachers. You teach Algebra 1. The gateway course to whether or not you graduate. We couldn't figure out why we had it. I'm embarrassed to share this percentage. 77% of our kids taking Algebra 1 failed Algebra 1. And then we started looking at it. Why do we have all the new, least experienced teachers working with the most needy kids and the most seasoned people working with the higher level math? Go ahead. You guys Google O.J. Simpson when you get a chance. Or imagine medical doctors. Doctor, welcome to our hospital. Happy to have you. Your first surgery will be conjoined twins. You're flying them in from Taiwan. You need to separate them, keep them alive. And Sanjay Gupta from CNN is going to record the whole thing. So go get them. No! New doctor would say, look, you're handling the common cold. You can watch as I perform this surgery. But we were giving the most veteran people the higher level math. And then the lower. Do you see how that was off? Right? We had policies and practices. And how about this one? Procedures, often dictated by a bell schedule that hasn't changed in decades. What happens at a school when you bring up, we might need to change the schedule? People freak, yes or no? Change the schedule? Why do we? It's laminated, damn it. We can't change it. Because in our profession, we laminate something, it's forever, yes or no? But what if that schedule from 1984 isn't meeting our needs in 2023? You see, policies, practices, procedures have to change, but you know what else is going to need to change? Can I get an amen? People's mindsets. And have you noticed that it's harder to change adult mindset than kid mindset? The hardest part about this work is not the kids. I have never been at a school where the kids are picketing outside. No to PLC. No to PLC. Like if that happens, with all due respect, you really screwed up. I've never seen that. But I've seen adults act that way. I've seen adults literally say, we already did that PLC stuff with the last superintendent. It doesn't matter who your superintendent is. It doesn't matter who your principal is. This is simply the right work moving forward. Does that make sense? So all of this is going to have to be the responsibility of leadership. Now, I got to change the picture in this graphic because it makes it look like leadership is one person. Leadership cannot be one person. It has to be a team of people. More on that in a moment. So my friends, here's the deal. My objective today is to emphasize what PLC is all about, coupled with language acquisition. I don't want you to see this as two different things. Because here's what I hear from many hardworking teachers, especially in May. Have you heard this one before? We feel overwhelmed. There are too many initiatives. So the last thing I want is for you to leave here today thinking that PLC is one thing and helping English language learners is a different thing. They are not two different puzzles. They are puzzle pieces that come together to formulate a single coherent focus on learning. Now, if you're going to embrace becoming a PLC, here are the 5 adult behaviors you're going to have to embrace. You're going to have to work in teams. The days of me going solo, Lone Ranger, are over. Everybody's got to be on the team. Second one, you're going to have to embrace something called a guaranteed and viable curriculum. In other words, in the state of Indiana, true or false, you all have a lot of standards. And true or false, they're very wordy. You can't kill people by making sure that all of you are working as a team on all of those. You're going to have to distinguish between, have you heard this before? Essential, important, and nice to know if we have time standards. The team focuses on anything deemed essential. Essential means kids cannot leave this grade level and not know this. Number 3, you're going to have to use common assessments so that these common assessments become the vehicle for number 4, this conversation. Hey, how did your kids do? How did my kids do? And what's the instructional strategy that worked best? And finally, number 5, we take action, RTI, responsible teachers intervening. Now here's the catch. I go to many places where people tell me this. Ready? They tell me, oh yeah, we do that. I'm not asking if you do it. I'm asking if you do it. I love my dad. My dad is wonderful. He's my best friend. I still have him. Doctor said he needs to start working out, so I took him to the gym. My dad says, I've been going to the gym for years. When I took him to the gym with me, I realized why he's not as healthy as he needs to be. He got on the treadmill for about 10 minutes and said, I'm done. I said, yeah, Dad, that's not the way it works. There's other things you need to do while you're at this gym. You have to lift some weights. You got to get a little sweat going. You got to feel that little bit of tiredness when you're on that treadmill. Not to the point where you're going to pass out, but to the point where your heart rate is getting a little quicker. So a lot of people go to the gym. Doesn't mean they know how to work out. Does that make sense? So a lot of people might be flirting with this, but they're not committing to these actions. Now, in addition to those actions, the adult mindset at a school has to be this if your school is going to become a PLC. Ready? Number 1, we are here to make sure student learning happens. We're not here just to love the kids. We're here to make sure that they learn. Number 2, we're not going to do this by ourselves. We're going to do this collaboratively. And number 3, we're going to use evidence of learning to determine whether or not learning is actually happening. So don't tell me the kids are happy. Look at them. I can bring a donkey to school. Kids will get happy. Yes or no, right? You need to see it. When I go to the doctors, don't tell me, you look fine, Luis. No. What tests have you done? Have you looked inside? How's my cholesterol looking? How's my sugar level doing? Don't just tell me I look healthy. Show me through evidence that I'm going to be around for a while because I need to be. This is in a nutshell what it means when your school becomes a PLC. Now, very impressed with you. Before I come to a community, I like to find out what you're all about. And you have something called the Elkhart Promise. And you have a very, very good vision statement. Now, you all work for Elkhart schools, yes or no? Yes. Turn to the person next to you and share what your Elkhart promise is, your mission, and what your Elkhart vision is. Ready? Go. All right, let me help you out. Now, I need you to know this. When a school or district becomes a PLC, they know this. And you have good ones. I'm complimenting you. I go to places where they don't have good ones. You have pretty good ones. I like what you say as an institution. Here's your Elkhart promise. Ready? Every student is known by name. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. You know what I'm impressed with? Look, look at how sweet this is. Welcome, Dr. Luiz Cruz. And you spelled Luiz right. And you spelled Cruz right. I went to a community where they said, welcome, Dr. Cruz, and my last name was C-R-U-I-S-E. And I said, oh, Tom's my cousin, but no. Look, you're making a commitment. This organization you are all employed by is saying that every student is known by name, challenged and supported by highly effective staff, and in partnership with the community, will graduate career college ready and life ready. Love it. And then your vision statement says, all students, and look at this, with the right mindset to meet the challenges of an ever-changing world. Love it. Very good. Here's the challenge in front of us. While you are saying the right things, your data is not indicative of that. Does that make sense? Now, I want to be very, very respectful of your hard work. I am sure everybody here brings their A game every day. But you have a system that hasn't been created for you to be successful. Does that make sense? So here's the deal, my friends. Your data right now is indicating there's a whole lot of kids not learning. When I looked at your data, I noticed that the vast majority of kids are not learning at high levels. Is that an accurate statement? And then when I looked at your EL data, it's in single digits. So we got some work to do. I'm going to say it again in case you missed it. It's not due to not working hard, and it's not due to not caring. We're going to have to embrace the effort that comes with redesigning a system so that our hard work is complemented by the right system. Does that make sense? All right. Now you have a better idea of what this PLC. Do we have clarity now? Yes? Are you with me here? Yes. Right? Is this making sense? Right? Thank you. All right. Now, let's talk about this child here. My parents had 2 sons. This is the cutest kid they have. I know a little something about English learners because I was one. And still am one. I still come across words I don't know. But I have the metacognition today to want to learn it on my own. Right? You know what used to throw me off? Get this. I'm a high school principal, and one of the English teachers approaches me and says, Dr. Cruz, that's a beautiful Argyle sweater. I went like this. Thank you. And then went to my office to look up the word Argyle. I grew up in the barrio. We don't go around saying, yo, sister, that's a beautiful Argyle sweater. You know what we say? That's a dope diamond sweater right there. Yes. So can we agree that language is contextual? And that we learn language based on the experiences we have? Now here's why I love my mom and dad. They're still with me, thank God. They come back from Ecuador today. That's where my family is from. Now ready for this? My mom and dad said, Luis Felipe, my middle name. Tú vas a aprender inglés. You're going to learn English. Pero no te vas a olvidar el español. You're not going to forget your Spanish. So every day I had a tutor show up at my house. Ready then? For an hour to teach me English. Ready? Here's my world-renowned tutor. You might recognize him. This was my tutor. Now, I'm not joking. That was really my tutor on a show called Electric Company. Does anybody remember Electric Company? Amazing show. That's an A-list actor. He's one of my favorite actors. Do you recognize the A-list actor on the screen? Morgan Freeman. Hello. So before Morgan Freeman was making like $1 million movies, he was on a show called Electric Company. He was the crazy consonant vowel DJ. Does anybody remember this from Electric Company? Young people are so confused right now. What is this? Remember? Yeah, good little song, yes. Summer. Come on, everybody participate. Sail, boat.
Sailboat.
Yes. My whole family would be gathered around the TV. Oh my God, we're speaking English. Now, here's the catch. The Electric Company was really good at teaching us something called, have you heard this acronym before? BICS. If you've never heard it, write it down, please. B as in boy, I-C-S. It stands for Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills. BICS. It's another way of saying conversational English. I strengthened my conversational English because shows like this and this helped me develop conversational English. Now, at the age of 7, something fascinating happens in my life. Ready? I have mastered BICS, so my family begins to use me as a translator everywhere I go. See, sister here can relate. I can tell right here. You do the same thing, right? So I go to restaurants. Ordena, tell them what we want. They're even 7. He wants chow mein. How do you translate chow mein? Chow mein? Yes. My dad would take me to the accountant. ¿Qué dice? You owe money. Debes dinero. My grandmother would take me to the doctor. I became a translator. And on Saturday nights, when my parents went salsa dancing, they tucked me in. Okay, mijo, acuéstate, and they'd go dance. Half an hour later, my grandmother who lived with us, she's laughing right now in heaven. She would say, vamos. She'd get me because there was 2 shows on TV I had to translate. The first one. Followed by the second one. These were shows on TV back then. Our Fantasy Island, very different than your generation's Fantasy Island. But I became a translator for my family. And here's what happened, right? I discovered I had a superpower. Because is it not a superpower within the context of global economy to be able to be doing it like this y también poder hacerlo así? Yo les puedo dar esta práctica completamente en español, sin problema. Yo les puedo explicar todo lo que es ser una comunidad de profesionales aprendiendo. También puedo hablar con ustedes sobre la importancia de los niños aprender a un nivel bien alto. You see, I'm telling you. How many of you would want your own children to be bilingual, biliterate? And if you're not raising your hand, something's wrong with you. So here's the deal. I am ready to take on a global economy. Because not only did you amazing people give me the knowledge I need to be successful, but I have 2 languages more than 1. So here's the deal. These kids in your classroom are assets, not deficits. Now, why are they assets? Like, what makes them an asset? Is this what Luis is saying to make us feel like good about these kids? No. Check it out. There's research. Look what happens to kids who are multilingual or bilingual. Read it yourself. This is what's happening right now. Businesses, organizations are looking for people that speak more than one language, because we are engaging in interactions with other countries who do not only know English. How about this one? Check this one out. According to 2017 research from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, lifelong bilingualism may delay dementia onset. Why? Well, what happens when you are constantly flipping in your head from one language to another? You're using different parts of your brain. So, we have to be clear. These children that in your schools right now are not struggling because you don't care. They're not struggling because you don't have the right system for these kids to move forward. So my friends, here, I thought I was in a movie. I couldn't believe what was going on. And now we're dealing with the aftermath, yes or no? Yes. Have you noticed that kids are walking into your classrooms behaving in ways that you hadn't seen for a long time? It's not just happening in Indiana, it's happening everywhere. My wife is an elementary school principal. She says we've seen behaviors because these are the COVID babies who never got taught the right behaviors. So here's the deal. This was a crisis. But Winston Churchill said what? Never let a good crisis go to waste. So maybe we have the opportunity right now to speak to our faculty and staff, people who could not be here, about the fact that our system is the issue, not the people in the buildings. So my friends, here's the deal. When we had 9/11 happen, who was around during that? I still remember where I was during 9/11. I was an assistant principal on my way to work. I heard what happened on the radio, and sure enough, it was a very, very emotionally draining day for our teachers and our staff. But we rebuilt, didn't we? That same area that looked like this looks like this today. There's even a tree there that symbolizes the resilience that we demonstrated as a human species. Infrastructure was rebuilt. After Katrina, can we agree that was a crisis, Katrina? Right? How many of you were watching TV going, why isn't anybody helping these people? Right? If you go to New Orleans today, it no longer looks like this. It looks like this. It still smells the same, but it looks like this. So here's the deal. Infrastructure was rebuilt. So let's talk about this word for a minute. Let's talk about this word infrastructure. Because think about this. These places, region or nation. Check it out. Examples of infrastructure include transportation systems, communication networks, sewage, water, and electric what? Systems. So you see, those systems had to be redesigned. In California, we're just waiting for the big one. That earthquake is going to hit. And so what are we busy doing right now in California? We're making sure that when it hits, our buildings could withstand that kind of tectonic movement, right? So, the good news is that our system that we need in our school, because we've talked about the system that we don't have, now let's talk about the system that we need, is based in science. So, did you hear me say professional public school educators? So do me a favor. The next time someone asks you what you do for a living, don't say, and please don't ever say, just a teacher, okay? I would say, I'm a professional public school educator. Because I'm tired of people thinking that they can do what we do. Without training. Exactly, right? And here's the crazy thing. There are places passing policy right now that's making it so that just about anybody can come in and teach. And if you don't believe me, look up Florida. But here's the deal. You need to say you're a professional public school educator. Why? Because we study the science needed so that human beings can learn. Now, I'm a middle school principal. Before that, I was an elementary school principal. I've been a principal at all three levels. I'm going to write a book one day called How the Adults Often Take on the Characteristics of the Children We Work With. I think it would be a bestseller. Yes or no? Yes. But here's the catch. We studied the science. And we implemented our science. And we saw phenomenal growth. So, we had a graduation rate that went from 72% in 2006 to 92% in 2012. I leave the school. 4 principals later, today, that graduation rate went from 92 to 97. We have more kids going to amazing trade schools and colleges than ever before, and the community hasn't changed. It's still low income. It's still lots of kids learning English as an additional language. We received this recognition from the state of California, the Golden Bell Award for highest achieving school serving EL kids in our state. And the number one question that I was asked during this time was, what's the program that you use? And our number one response was, it's not a program. It's how we changed our policies, practices, and procedures, along with our mindsets to do this right work. So, my friends, our journey began with this study. It's called the Beat the Odds Study. It's out of Arizona, the Morrison Institute. If you're interested in finding it, here's where you can find it. If you Google Beat the Odds Study, Arizona State University, you get the whole study. Ready? Here's what they did. They found schools that were mostly EL kids. They followed them for about 10 years. They saw that these schools had tremendous results, and they published their findings. Now, if we were not professional public school educators, I wouldn't be asking you to read. But can we agree that professionals keep up with the latest best practice? So this is a study that looked at what does it take to get great results in educational achievement in a school which is with a student enrollment that is mostly Latino, mostly poor, and has many students who are still learning English. Now, before I go any further, can we agree that not all ELs are Latino, and not all ELs come in speaking only Spanish? Do we have kids that come in speaking Arabic, Mandarin, right? Farsi? Of course. I think this can be applied. In fact, I know it can be applied to those populations as well. But this study looked at these kids, and here's what they found. Ready? There were 6 things that these schools did differently. Number 1, in these schools, when you walked in, there was a clear bottom line. In other words, because schools don't exist in a vacuum, and things that happen outside of schools influence what happens inside schools, these schools made it very clear. At our school, all means all. It does not matter what their immigration status is. It does not matter whether they come from single-parent families. Once they're dropped off at our doorstep, they're ours. And it's our job to help them. In one school I went to in Arizona, the principal and the leadership team at the school made it very clear. If you have issues with immigration, they're going to affect the way you interact with these kids, then don't come to this school. Because at our school, there are kids the minute they're dropped off. Are you following me? All means all. Second, they use ongoing assessment. Does that sound familiar? They also had a strong and steady principle, but here's the catch. Leadership was not just the principal. Teachers were leaders. I love the way you were welcomed here. We have different kinds of leaders in the audience. You're not all administrators, but the bottom line is you're all leaders. So if leadership is not inclusive of teachers, this is not going to work. Next, they had collaborative solutions. They stuck with it. It was an ongoing process. Then we take action in the form of intervention. Isn't this sounding a lot what I just described PLC to be? So you see, my friends, it's not 2 different puzzles. It's 2 puzzle pieces that come together to formulate a single coherent focus on all kids learning. Now, here's what ends up happening. We developed something called the Ingredients for Systematic EL Academic Achievement. Let me share it with you now. I'd like to go into the 4 parts that at your school you're going to have to become masterful at. Now, all that stuff with common assessments and collaboration, that's still part of the equation. But here is an additional ingredient for you. First, there's going to have to be something at the school called transformational leadership. Now, transformational leadership is not admin. Transformational leadership is, I'm admin. These are 4 teachers at our school that are going to be members of our guiding coalition or task force. they are going to advise me on what I need to do as an administrator to help our staff. Does that make sense? Because they are teachers, they can give me real time, this is what people are feeling. People are feeling overwhelmed. People are feeling not supported. If I'm going to be an effective administrator, I need to listen to my teacher leaders so that I can move forward in a way that is going to be supportive of our faculty and staff. Is this making sense? So transformational leadership is not just admin. The second thing we're going to need is systematic, school-wide, effective EL instruction. So it turns out that the way we teach has a lot to do whether or not EL kids are going to be successful. We're going to have to make sure these kids feel welcome at our school and that on a daily basis we remind them that at this school they're not a number but a name, an actual person. And last but not least, we're going to make sure that parents are empowered to support us in this endeavor of all kids learning at a high level. Are you still with me out there? Yes? All right, so let's get into the first quadrant, the one that talks about effective EL instruction. So I gave you the first one, BICS. BICS stands for Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills. Here's the other acronym I want you to remember. CALP, Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. CALP is the academic language that our kids need to explicitly learn. BICS is the language that they are going to learn by simply being around it and, of course, getting some help in it. Now, let me demonstrate this. Who here does not speak any Spanish? Raise your hands. All right, what is your name, my friend? Marsha. Luis, nice to meet you. So, at the end of the day, we're done by 3. Meet me in the parking lot. We're going to drive to a place called Juarez, Mexico. I'm going to leave you there for a year. Now, don't worry, it's the same part of Juarez, okay? It's safe there. Okay? Now, I'm going to leave Marsha there for a year. I'm going to come back and get her in a year. She will have developed BICS. Marsha's going to greet me this way. Ready? Luis, ¿cómo estás? Vamos a comer 2 tequilas, por favor. Right? Okay, 3 tequilas. Those for you, 1 for me. I like that. Marsha will have picked up BICS, yes or no? Her conversational Spanish is there. But ready for this? If I take Marsha and drop her off in the University of Guadalajara in a chemistry class, she's going to be lost and confused. 4 tequilas. Why? Why is she going to be confused? Because that's not conversational Spanish anymore. That is academic Spanish. So if kids are not taught academic English explicitly, they're not going to learn it. Now here's the catch. Let's do an experiment, shall we? Oh, let's do this, please. Let's do this, Elkhart, Indiana. Let's do this. Let's give the WIDA to non-EL kids. Who wants to bet that these kids are not going to score in the highest levels of WIDA? They're going to score somewhere in between mediocre and below mediocre. Why? 56% of your kids come from low-income homes. Good parents, many of them may be single parents, that love their kids, but do not have, possibly, more than likely, a formal education. They're not hearing academic language at home. So these kids also need it, don't they? Now, here's what happens. Now, mind you, my wife is an elementary school principal. Both of us are college graduates. We came here, first-generation Americans. Ready for this? I'm watching my daughter, my youngest daughter, who's a soccer phenom, right? She plays soccer. She's going to college on a soccer scholarship. I'm watching her work with her team. She's the captain of her soccer team. Kid you not. I'm a professor of leadership. I wanted to hear my kid, and this is what I hear her tell her players. Ready? Ladies, we're getting killed out there. We need to extrapolate from their offensive moves the defensive prowess to get in there and fight. Let's be resilient, ladies. And I'm going. I went over to my wife and I said, when did she learn extrapolate? When did she learn resilient prowess? Well, here's the catch. My wife is an educator. I'm an educator. Our idea of a romantic evening is having wine and discussing extrapolating learning targets from essential standards. That became common language in our family. So in middle class, upper middle class homes, I'm not saying they're not going to need explicit instruction in academic language, but not like the kids who don't hear it at home. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So my friends, here's the deal. Stephen Krashen from USC says that our classrooms are going to have to be filled with comprehensible input. And he defines comprehensible input as those things that we do when kids might not understand the words, but understand what we mean. Allow me to demonstrate. This side of the auditorium. Ready? Roto. Printi. Roto. Printi. Printi. Roto. Very good. Printi. All right. Why didn't you all get it? I said it louder and slower. Write that on your notes right now. Write it down. EL kids are not hard of hearing. Write that down. Because sometimes when I'm watching TV, they're like, Roto! They can't hear you. It wasn't until I injected comprehensible input that you understood that Roto meant what? Stand up. And priti means stand. Did you recognize the language I was speaking? It's called Luis's made-up language to make a point. So when I am doing long-term training, I teach the 3 branches of government using that made-up language, a bunch of visuals, and kinesthetic movements. This is what comprehensible input looks like, right there. This is what effective instruction should look like in every classroom in Elkhart, Indiana. There's a difference between professional teachers and people that come in thinking that teaching is presenting. Yes or no? Anybody can present, but not every people who are horrible at teaching. Right? Our kids need excellent teachers, not by chance, but by design. So here's the first thing you're going to need. In your classrooms, at your schools, how much of the teaching that goes on looks like this? And let me be clear, where are my elementary friends at? Raise your hands. Middle school, raise your hands. High school, raise your hands. This is not elementary school teaching. This is simply effective teaching. Now, I'll be honest with you. For the most part, there are exceptions. The best teaching I've seen in my 3 decades of being involved in this profession happens usually between TK and 3. You people are amazing. You cannot lecture because those kids will eat you alive. 4 through 6, I've seen some exceptional teachers, but I start seeing more lecturing. Middle school, I have come across amazing there was a middle school math, I still remember her name, Aurora Free. The best math teacher I've ever seen. Her kids were engaged, stand up, sit down, go to the center. And no doubt every one of those kids walked out of there learning math. But the rest of the math department lectured. When I got to the high school, we had an exceptional chemistry teacher, we had an exceptional PE teacher, but everyone else lectured. And we didn't know why our kids weren't learning. This is why they weren't learning. If these things aren't being used on a daily basis, it becomes a crapshoot for kids. So I'm a new kid from Guatemala at a middle school. My first period teacher does that. I love that class. Second period, none. Third period, none. Fourth period, half of that. Fifth period is amazing, just like the first period teacher. Sixth period, none of that. And now you're asking me why I have an achievement? It's not an achievement yet. You did not give me the opportunity in all 6 of my classes to learn at the levels I needed. Is this making sense? Now, how many of you like that graphic? This is where you can find it. I'm going to hook you up. Google image of scaffolding strategies. And you get this. I need you to go back to your schools and say, hey guys, let's talk. We have the right people. We have the right love for our kids. But if teaching doesn't look like this across the board, we're not giving our EL kids the opportunity to learn at the levels they need. Are you following me? Now, for those of you taking pictures while I'm presenting, thank you. That makes me feel really good. But I like you already, so I'm going to be sending the PDF of this entire PowerPoint to you. All right? Because I don't say that everywhere I go. But I like you. You're engaged. So I will send it to you. I've already sent it to you, so you can share it with my friends. Okay, now, another name for scaffolding strategies. Ready? This is really academic. Ready? Here it is. This is the other name, because it's called scaffolding strategies. You see it? Here's the other name that I give it. Ready? Really good teaching for all kids. So there's some people out there that would listen to this, and this is what they would say. Oh, so great. Now I got to separate my EL kids and my EO kids, and I got to teach my EL kids like this, and I got to teach my EO kids. No! Teach all your kids like this. If tomorrow Luis was assigned to be a teacher in North Carolina with affluent white kids who came in speaking English as their first language, I would teach my kids like this. Because they would learn. I need them to learn. So maybe we should stop calling it scaffolding strategies. This is really good teaching for all. So my friends, when I was a 5th grade teacher, this was my goal. Get them to touch stuff. Get them to see stuff. Get them to feel stuff. Get them to talk to one another. So, it was about my 3rd year of being a 5th grade teacher that I mastered that skill that regular people don't have, where I could be doing a read aloud and not skip a beat and check to see if my kids were following. Anybody remember when you developed that? That comes like 2nd, 3rd year. Like regular people can't do that. They have to stop reading and check. No, I was like still reading and checking. I hooked them. I got my kids good. I was doing a read aloud called The Flood. And this was about a story that took place in, I believe it was Iowa, one of those I's, right? And it was about a town that is flooded by a dam that breaks. So I was taught, you got to front load that vocabulary. So I did. I said, dam does not mean that dam, it means dam. I showed them a picture of it. I showed them on a map where Iowa was. We talked about what some of the words that they were going to see was, and I was reading with passion. Recess bell rings. And they're like, no, teacher, finish. I was like, oh, it's a good day, right? So here I am reading, ready? And then suddenly, Mary says to Joseph, Joseph, the dam seems to be breaking. Look at the cracks. And as they both approached the cracks, they noticed the cracks were getting bigger and bigger in front of their eyes. And Mary turned to Joseph and said, Joseph, run! The dam is going to break. The dam is going to break. And as they ran behind them, water began to flow out of the dam. And within hours, the town would be inundated with water. And when I said the word inundated, they were like, what's that, teacher? I forgot to front load inundated. So right there, I had to create a what? Teachable moment. So this is what I said. Ready? Students, this room is being inundated with water. Get on your desks. 5th graders. Ah! They all got on their desks. They all got on their desks. Get on your desk. Save your shoes. Take off your shoes. Hurry. So I I started taking off my shoes, and they started taking off their shoes, and we had organized chaos. And right there and then, what happens? Principal and superintendent are people. Now, my principal was very serious, very old school guy. His idea of an organized classroom was quiet, kids with their hands folded. Thank God our superintendent was different. So they walked in my classroom. Can you imagine the chaos? Kids are on top of their desks. We're violating every fire rule imaginable. We're throwing our shoes in the middle and putting them in a bag so we can save our shoes for the... I said, the room is being inundated. They walked in. I said, hello, gentlemen. Jump on the shelf. This room is being inundated with water. Principal. Superintendent. You heard him. Let's go. They get on the desk. Right? And so then I said, gentlemen, take off your shoes. I said, I won't mess with my principal. Take off your shoes. Principal. Superintendent. You heard him. Taking off his shoes. I said, boys and girls, the water is now up to our noses. It's up to our noses. What does inundate mean? Teacher, it means everywhere, covered everywhere, that the water was everywhere. That's right. So when the town was inundated by water, what does that mean? It means the entire town was covered with water, teacher. The farm animals are dying. Then I went like this. Now go to recess. Okay, I didn't stop there. At the end of the day, I gave all the kids ticket. And I said, all right, we learned some words today. So they would write down inundate in the back. Now, here's the catch. They now had a ticket that they had to turn in to me by using the word in a real life setting. So true story, right? I'm out there doing yard work. I laugh because this just blew my mind. I remember it like it was yesterday. A 25-year-old me out there doing yard duty. And Jose, one of my favorite kids of all times, right? We all have our favorites, don't lie. He walks over to me and goes, and he always walked like this. He looked like a little Alfred Hitchcock. And he goes, hello, Mr. Cruz. I said, what's up, Jose? And he goes, I am fine. I go, how's it going today? Listen to what he says. He goes, today, I am inundated with happiness. Jose, why are you inundated with happiness? He goes, because today in the cafeteria they gave bean and cheese burritos. And that just filled me with happiness. I said, all right, give me your ticket. So the kids would turn in their tickets when they would use that language on their own. Does that make sense? I don't know where Jose is today. I'd love to see what that kid is doing. I'm sure he's successful with it. I don't know what he does. I don't know if he went to college or not. But I can bet you he knows what inundate means. Because he turned that word into his language. Does that make sense? None of this is copyright. Take it. How about sentence? How many of you have used sentence frames? If you don't know about sentence frames, write that down. Google it. Find out about it, because it's the way that we teach kids how to write and speak academically. You see, sentence frames look like this. The similarities between blank and blank indicate, and the kids have to fill in the gap. So it could be, the similarities between World War I and World War II indicate that both wars produced many deaths and financial hardship for countries involved. Or it can look like this. The most obvious difference between blank and blank is, and you fill in the blanks. By comparing the blank to the blank, we learn that, and there it is. So imagine kids learning how to speak academically with aid. Now, I had sentence frames when I was growing up. I'm going to bet many of you have sentence frames. They didn't call it sentence frames back in the day. They called it Madlibs back in the day. Does anybody remember Madlibs? Love me some Madlibs. I thought I was writing a book, right? Now, funny thing is today I write books for a living. And I think my mom, and I remember like yesterday, my mom saying, escribe, write, and I would, the verb, the adjective. So see, this is what teaching looks like. Not just in elementary, not just in middle school and high school. We are using these things. We are making sure that we are using visuals and reality. Science people, do we have any science people from middle school, high school in here? Science people, your curriculum is amazing. You have stuff that you can Like our chemistry teacher would blow up stuff. Look, red, blue, boom, smoke. People would touch things. It was amazing. Visuals all over the world, the room. See, my friends, this is what it looks like. Now, when we're teaching content, that's what teaching is supposed to look like. But every school is going to need one of these people. It might be a female, it might be a male, doesn't matter. But you're going to need someone who's going to explicitly teach them more. Listening in English, speaking in English, reading in English, writing in English. So let me be clear. I am the ELD teacher at my school. All the ELs come to me, and I collaborate with all the other teachers. So this is a math team over here, Algebra 1. They're letting me know that one of the academic vocabulary words that you're going to introduce your kids to is simplifying equations. So I might know that, and I might teach my kids, okay, everybody, come on, here we go. Go like this. Everybody go like this. Simplify. Do it with me. Show me simplify. Say it with me. Simplify. Simplify. Okay, then I go, hey, this is what I showed them. I showed them simplify. It goes like this. So now when they're teaching in front of those kids, the actual content, they're going to say, hey, today we're going to simplify. What's the student doing? My ELD teacher taught me that. It means to take something big and break it down. So in math, they're going to teach me how to take something big and break it down. You see, my friends, listening, speaking, reading, and writing needs to be taught explicitly. Are you following me? So here's what happens. Ready? This teacher with these teachers together create collaboration opportunities that moves us from those are your kids, these are my kids, to what? These are our kids. This is what needs to happen at your school sites. Now, we're down to almost 30 minutes. Time flies when you're learning. Yes. So here's what I need you to have a quick discussion on while I take a breath and drink water before I press up. Okay? I just described to you ideal, effective instruction. What it needs to look like. I'm trying to make the case that while we might have people that love kids, I doubt any people, correct me if I'm wrong, but I doubt anybody at your school writes on their things to do list, today I will screw over as many ELs as I can. What's best for our kids, yes or no? But we might not have the right system. Now, system includes practice. So right now, how sure are you that what I just described is happening in your schools? Because if it's that crapshoot where like 1 or 2 people are doing it, but it's not happening school-wide, then we've created expectations for learning by chance, not by design. Quick conversation with people around you. Is this making sense? And what is going to be needed to get every adult to commit to this kind of teaching? Because unless we do, you're going to keep getting the same results that you're getting right now. Kids that need us to prepare them at high levels, not being prepared at high levels. 2-3 minute discussion, and then we'll move forward. Ready? Go. have 30 minutes left. So here's what we're saying. Let me connect the dots. If a PLC is about all kids learning at high levels, i.e. we're allowed to be ethically greedy, all means all, then we have to really question, do we have the right system that complements the people behind this work? Now, while I do think we have the right people, some of these right people might not be embracing best practices. We're going to have to make sure that what we just discussed insofar as effective instruction is happening at our sites. Not once in a while, every day, for all kids, but especially kids learning English as an additional language. If not, the opportunity for them to learn will not be present. Does that make sense? Now, second quadrant, talking about relationships. So Stephen Krashen says we're also going to have to be very cognizant of the affective filter. Now, what's the affective filter? The affective filter, he says, is the invisible psychological factors that might make kids feel like they're not wanted here. Look, I'm not going to pretend, okay? We are a very divided nation right now. It's sad, to be honest with you, it's sad that people from opposing political parties can't have conversations anymore. So here's the deal. Because schools don't exist in a vacuum, things that happen out there affect what happens inside of our school. Does that make sense? So when a child hears, or when a family hears, that certain people in our nation do not want certain people with immigration status in schools, we have to counter that by letting these people know it doesn't matter what's being talked about out there. In our school, you're welcome. We're happy to have you. If we don't know, like one of the most amazing things I ever saw when I did work in Washington was the secretaries came in during their break to see what the teachers were receiving as far as this PD, and they approached me at break saying, Dr. Cruz, we love what you were teaching our teachers, but we're the first faces that families see, and none of us speak Spanish. Can you teach us some little words that we can use when they come in so that they know that we're happy to see them? See, that to me is a healthy culture, yes or no? They wanted to learn how to say, Hola, ¿cómo están? Pasen, por favor. And then when the families would start talking, they said that they'd smile, they'd say, Muy poquito, un momento, por favor. But that was okay, because what was the message they were sending? Hey, I might not speak a lot of Spanish, but I'm going to find someone who does, and we're happy you're here. Thank you, Mrs. Garcia. Gracias, Senora Garcia. And all of a sudden, you can just feel that affective filter go down. Does that make sense? So, the affective filter, when raised, blocks learning. So, look, sometimes kids see faces that look a certain way, and they assume everyone that looks that way doesn't want me here. Does that make sense? So, if I'm a Latino kid coming to a school that mostly has white teachers, I need our white teachers to say, welcome, and then the kids are going to go, oh, they like me. They want me here. Same thing with Latino teachers, right? You know what I did, who I did that to in my LA community? The white kids at our school. You know why? White kids were a minority at our school. I had like 2 out of 2,400 kids. So I would find my white kids and say, hey, who loves you? You do, Dr. Cruz. That's right. Come on, Billy, you're gonna do great. Right? I had like 9 African American kids. So I had to let them know, hey, don't be fooled by the fact that we're a mostly Latino school. You're part of the us. You're part of the we. I did not want any of my kids feeling like they didn't belong. Does that make sense? Because of race. So here's the deal, my friends. We want to make sure that we understand that when kids are feeling stressed, when kids are feeling like we don't belong, when kids are feeling scared, nervous, when you're allowing people to make fun of the fact that they're not speaking English, that's not okay. Then their affective filter is going to be so high they don't learn. regardless of the comprehensible input you provide. All right. That was the second quadrant, very quickly. Third quadrant, parents empowerment. What are you doing as a school to say to these parents, we want you, come, we need you? If all you're doing is sending letters in English to Spanish-speaking homes, good luck with that. They can't read English. That doesn't make them a deficit. It doesn't make you a deficit if you go to their country and you don't understand Spanish. You just don't get that language. So here's the deal. We wanted to make sure that so I had pan dulce with Dr. Cruz. And these parents would come, we'd give them sweetbread, big circle, and we would just talk. ¿Qué quieren saber de la escuela? What do you want to know about the school? We lowered that our filter, and then we started hearing things like this. Teacher, what is GPA? ¿Qué es GPA? Does F on the report card really mean fantastico? Because that's what my kids say. Right? Right? Teacher, you always talk about college. Can you take us to a college? We took it was more like 60 of our families to a field trip to USC. USC told us, we don't have room for tours. We said, we're going anyway. Have everyone dress up in gold and burgundy. We'll blend in. So imagine 64 of us, all different colors of gold and burgundy. I think I'd pull a kid who I thought maybe spoke Spanish. I said, listen, I'll pay for your lunch if you talk to us about what your experience has been like here. It was amazing. So we started our parent university. These are our first graduates. We taught our parents what we needed. I need you to make sure you know this. This idea that low-income Latino parents don't care about their kids' education is a myth. It's right up there with Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot, man. I'm telling you right now that in our culture, I can say our because I'm part of it, we don't say señor or señora. How do we refer to as teachers? What do we hear it say? Maestro or maestra. Why? Because in our culture, the maestro or maestra is up there. Notice that in our American English culture, we use doctor. We never say Miss Jones or Mr. Hernandez. We say what? Doctor. You know how many times I've told people not to call me doctor even though I'm not a real doctor? Right? I'll say, call me Luis. No, Dr. Cruz, you've heard that. It's very respectful. But in the same way that, so I hear this complaint sometimes. Well, these parents don't show up. They don't volunteer. Have you invited them in their own language? Have you said, come in? Because do doctors complain? Well, these parents don't come in and volunteer. Like, I'm going to bust through a surgeon's room. Hey, give me that scalpel. Until she calls us, I'm not showing up. So we would teach our kids what we wanted. Then we celebrated with dinner on the 5th day. And then they recruited more families to come to the 5 nights of the Parent University. We had every Tuesday night starting at 8. Because starting at 6 didn't work in our community. They were barely getting home from work. We fed our people, and then we brought in very engaging speakers. And for 5 weeks straight, they learned what we needed them to learn. And then we invited them. So I get the news one day at our high school that we are going to have to, because of funding, cut from our 6 campus security aides to 3.5. I had 4, but one of them was really lazy, so 3.5. Yeah? So I had campus security aides, and I needed more. So what did I do? Padres de familia, buenas noches. Si ustedes están interesados en asegurar que esta escuela siga saludable, por favor vengan a una reunión a las 7 de la noche el martes para discutir cómo pueden ayudarnos. Parents, I need your help. We've been cut funding. If you want to maintain a safe school, please come to our meeting to be held Tuesday at 7 p.m. to discuss how you can help us maintain a safe school. So 36, mostly moms, showed up. And we started the Baldwin Park High School Parent Patrol. We trained, we put jackets on them, we gave them radios, and in teams of 2, they were not allowed to touch kids. I said, if you see a fight, you don't touch it, you call it in, and 3.5 will get them. Okay? So I would be in my office, and what would I hear? What would I hear in my office? This is Parent Patrol. We are for the gymnasium. We spend marijuana. Hurry! Mr. Bozigian, a retired grandfather, took care of all the bathrooms. At a middle school and high school, where does all the action go down? In the bathroom. So he would stand there during lunch, and kids would go in, he'd open the door for them. Hello, boys. Close the door, 3 seconds later, go right in after him. Okay, are we done? Let's go. It became such a, I'll never forget this. Mr. Bozigian was sick with bronchitis one week. The kids coming in, is everything okay with Mr. Bozigian? Why isn't he at his bathroom? The kids want to see campus too. Yes. So these parents were empowered to contribute to the school that we needed, right? Our Baldwin Park High School Parent Patrol. All right, leadership. Let's discuss leadership very quickly before we end. Leadership, okay, let's just sum it up. We've discussed 3 of the 4 quadrants. Number 1, instruction has to embrace scaffolding, what we also call good teaching for all kids. Relationships have to be strong with kids. Kids have to know that we love them and that we want them to do well, and we don't care what's happening outside of our school, but in this school, you are a person and you matter. Our parents are being taught how to contribute. Now let's talk about how all this happens, because leadership is not one person. John Cotter is a professor out of Harvard. He studies leadership in organizations. Everybody, choral reading on 3. Read what's on the screen for me, nice and loud. 1, 2, 3, go.
No one person, no matter how competent, is capable of single-handedly developing the right vision, communicating it to a vast number of people, eliminating all key obstacles, generating short-term wins, leading and managing dozens of change projects, and anchoring new approaches deep in an organization's culture.
Putting together the right coalition of people to lead a change initiative is critical to its success. So if the change at your school is going to have to be, we need more people teaching the way these kids need in order to learn, or we need our faculty to embrace our parent community as assets, not deficits, or we need the simple act of everyone standing in front of their door when kids are coming in and greeting them when they come in. I don't know if you know this, but when that happens across the school, they have measured that impact, and it has a tremendous effect on that affective filter that we want to lower. Then we're going to have to put together a team of people. So admins can't do this by themselves. They're going to need to see teachers standing in front of other teachers advocating. How many of you have teachers that couldn't come today because they had other things they had to worry about? Be honest. They wanted to come, but they couldn't come. Okay, now let's raise our hand for this. How many of us have teachers that could have come, but chose not to come? Right? So here's the deal. You want to influence those teachers? Teachers. No one is more powerful at influencing than you. Does that make sense? Teachers influence other teachers. So we want to make sure that no longer can effective leadership be synonymous with only admin. Teacher leadership must be an integral part of effective leadership if the goal is to begin a powerful movement focused on student learning versus a limited fad. So, every school needs a leadership team, but sometimes that leadership team can't do it by themselves. What they're going to need, based on your data, is an English learner task force. What's an English learner task force? Here's what it looks like. Ready? We are the leadership team. We're in charge of all kids. We're in charge of our whole school. Everybody, we're looking at the data. Look at your data right now. Everybody go like this. We're looking at our data. EL kids aren't learning. We need help. Year after year, month after month, EL kids are not learning. So, hey, we're going to tap into you folks to be our EL task force. We're going to work together. But while we focus on all kids, you guys are just going to focus on the EL. Does that make sense? And you're going to communicate to us what you see happening and not happening. This is what it looks like right here. That's an EL task force right there. Notice that while I'm not into NASCAR, it's pretty incredible what happens when these cars pull in to the pit crew, yes or no? Yes. They change an engine. They change tires. They pump gas in less than 10 seconds. So when people come together, it's pretty amazing what they can do. So at our school, It started with the principal, and then I tapped into Rosa Diaz, an amazing teacher leader at our school. I said, Rosa, we're starting a team focused on ELs. Yay! I need you to be in charge. Hell no! I said, why not, Rosa? What did Rosa say? I don't have time. She was right. She taught 5 English classes and had 1 prep. I said, Rosa, what if we gave you the time? So we tapped into our Title I funds. We gave her 4 classes of English, 1 prep, and 1 hour a day to be the leader of the EL task force. She says, now I can do it. She recruited the ELD ESOL teacher. She recruited the parent liaison, the new one, because the previous parent liaison had an issue with parents. You cannot be the parent liaison and have an issue with parents. Okay? So we got the right people on the bus. We tapped into 2 counselors, a parent, and then a professor who knew all about scaffolding strategies. This was our team that made the changes at our school that needed to happen. I was not the leader of the EO task force. She was the leader of the EO task force. I used my authority as principal to get some of the things they wanted to do to happen. Now, one of the things that drove Rosa crazy is, Luis, why does everybody keep asking me if we're going to have enchiladas for Cinco de Mayo? I'm not in charge of the Cinco de Mayo. We needed to make sure people understood why we existed. So we came up with a purpose statement. The EO task force will increase student academic achievement by promoting a community within our school that embraces the learning needs of English learners. So at a faculty meeting, it would look like this. I'm the principal. You play the role of the faculty. Ready? Here we go. Good morning, everyone. Let's go. For today's faculty meeting, ladies and gentlemen, our mission continues to be all kids learning at high levels. So today, members of our guiding coalition are going to address some of the things that we need to do to move forward. Take it away, guiding coalition. I would stay in the room. I never would leave the room. And then the guiding coalition would come up. Hey everyone, our purpose is to continuously support our faculty and staff in redesigning our system so that all kids can learn. Today we're going to look at data, because without data, we're just people with an opinion. And in God we trust, everyone else needs data. So here we go, everybody. We're going to look at our data, and we're going to celebrate where learning is happening. But as you can see in our analysis, our EL kids continue not to make the strides we need. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to hand it over to Rosa and her EL task force, who are going to talk to us about what we need to do. So then the EL task force comes up, a team of 5 people, and they come up and say, hey everyone, thank you very much, Guiding Coalition. So let's focus in on EL. We're going to talk about what scaffolding strategy. You see how this works? It's never just the principal. Because if the only person standing in front of the faculty and staff is admin, the mind starts thinking, as soon as this admin leaves, we won't have to do this anymore. It doesn't matter who is the administrator. Whether it's your current superintendent or next year's superintendent, doesn't matter. This is called best practice. Does that make sense? So my friends, here's the deal. The 7 steps that an EL task force takes. I'm actually writing a book. I'm about to finish it on this topic. So I'm talking about the 7 steps that an EL task force takes. Number 1, they assemble themselves as a team. Number 2, they study the problem. Is the problem that our faculty and staff does not know what to do? Or is the problem they know what to do and they're just not doing it? You got to study the problem. What's the data telling us? Is it that our EL kids are not learning BICS, or is it that we have long-term ELs that have hit a ceiling and aren't able to get over that bump? What do we need to do? Once we study the problem, we look for answers. That's step number 3. Are there schools in Indiana that are doing this work much more effectively than us? Possibly. Let's find them. And let's go visit those schools. Is there a conference that we can go to learn more of this stuff? I spearhead one called Soluciones. Through Solution Tree, for 2.5 days, all we talk is ELs. How do we help them? Are there books? Let's find the answers. Let's become professionally curious about what we need to do. And then once we find the answers, let's establish some goals of what we want to see improved. But let's make them SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and timely. And then once we have the goals, let's create a plan. But our plan has to have support and accountability. Support means we're going to give you, staff, whatever you need. Accountability means we want a return on that investment once you get it. So what good is me giving you what you need if you're not going to use it? And then once we do that, let's do something crazy. Let's implement the plan. Because diets work when we do them, right? Last but not least, we're going to have to meet periodically to assess and realign that plan. Because might adults throw us a curveball, yes or no? Of course. This is the 7 steps that EL task force is going to take. They are going to embrace transformational leadership. They are going to make sure that we stay focused on the things that need to happen at our school for these kids to learn. So now district office has their team. And how many schools we have in Elkhart, Indiana?
We have 14 elementary, 3 middle schools, 1 high school.
Okay, so 18 schools, correct? Okay, let's say that 10 of those schools have growing EL populations. Then there are 10 EL task forces at that school. And we work through the task forces to, might they look different, right? You know what I often refer to as culture? The soundtrack of your school. There's a different soundtrack playing at every school. In August, you all have this soundtrack playing, right? Eye of the Tiger? Yes or no? Don't Stop Believing? But usually around May, the #1 soundtrack is what? Jesus Take the Wheel, yes or no? So, who knows the cultures best than the people from that school? So you will know best how to motivate your people. Now, this is what it looks like. I'm so excited. I'm using a thinking map here to spread the word. Ready? There's the guiding coalition. There's your EL task force. Oh, but we also have kids with IEPs not learning. Okay, you have a student with IEP task force. Oh, but we got an attendance issue at our school. Oh, an attendance task force. And in Roosevelt School District in Arizona, the African American boys weren't learning according to their data, so they created an African American male task force. And what if, like, reading is atrocious across the school? Then you start a reading across the curriculum task force. And all of these teams report back to the guiding coalition, and they advise admin on the changes that we need to make. Now, I used to listen to my teachers because teachers would say, Luis, people aren't seeing the connection, slow down. Or Luis, we're ready to go, speed up. The only thing I would not accept is stop. We have to keep going. You can slow it down, you can change it slowly, but we got to keep going. So my friends, this is how you stop being insane. Wanting different results by doing the same thing. And can we agree that schools have something called organizational insanity? So, you're still going to use common assessments with EL, but I need you to keep this in mind. Teams will use common assessments for those reasons when working with the general student population, but when working with ELs, you've got to keep the English language development in mind. So what does that mean? It means that if this is how we use common formative assessments, right? Here's our summative assessment, here's our scope and sequence, and we are creating learning targets and then following them up with common formative assessments over and over and over and over again. That's good. But you know this idea of the common formative assessment has to look the same? For the ELs, it might need to look different. Because what are we keeping in mind? Mix and calc. What if their English language development is not at a point where they can read the assessment or write the answer down? So for our level 1s, you're going to tell me orally what the 3 branches of government are. For everyone else who can read and write, it'll be the same. So there is a tweak that you can make there. Now let me be clear. You are not lowering your expectations. You are just changing the vehicle that you use to assess. Does that make sense? Another tweak you're going to need to make is analyzing the common assessments. So when you analyze common assessments, it might look like this. 6 questions that each team is embracing, especially question number 2. Which instructional practice proved to be the most effective? So if I'm a member of the 3rd grade team right here, and the 4 of us are analyzing the results of our common assessments using those 6 questions, then someone says, all right, now let's look at it through the lens of EL students. So what do? I change the 6 questions. I make a tweak so that they're the EL students. Which EL students are demonstrating mastery or not? Which of our instructional practices help those kids learn? So you're looking at it through 2 lenses. Does that make sense? You're looking at it through the lens of the general student population, but on the back, you're looking at it through the EL. How are the EL kids doing so that they don't fall by the wayside? Now, let me end by saying something that Dr. Anthony Muhammad, the most amazing scholar in this work, said to me years ago. Luis, all of this is great, but I want you to pretend that this is like building a garden of learning. You're definitely going to need seeds for your garden, yes or no? Well, the seeds represent everything we know about how EL kids learn. But in addition to the seeds, you're going to need soil. What is the soil? The attitude, values, and willingness of the staff to behave in such a way as to implement this research with passion and integrity. So the EL task force isn't just showing people seeds. They are also tilling that soil, yes or no? They're making sure that people understand that it's not okay to have knowledge and not use it. Because kids' lives are at stake. So we need to make sure, my friends, that we learn how to move fixed-minded people to growth-minded. And sometimes that's not going to make us the most popular people. Here's the best compliment that I got when I was a high school principal leaving the school. Here it is, ready? I still don't like Luis, but I gotta admit, he made our school better. I don't need everyone to like me. I need God, my wife, and kids to love me. Everyone else is an elective in my life. So if me doing the right thing is gonna bother you, then we're gonna have to learn how to coexist without you liking me. And that's okay. So my friends, don't fall into this opportunity gap. Everybody say it with me. Knowledge? Knowledge. I don't hear everybody now. Knowledge? Knowledge. Is not power. It's not power. Until it is applied. Until it is applied. Did you learn something today? Yes. Here's what I'm curious about. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with this knowledge? Because you cannot leave here and say, well, that was nice. They did not bring me in to make you feel nice. Everybody say this one with me. This one's really powerful. Ready? Vision, without execution, is hallucination. That's Mark Twain, not Luiz Cruz. So don't fall into the knowing-doing gap. We know what to do now. We're just not going to do it. Now let me end with this. I am successful today because of people like you. Now, what do I mean by success? I am not wealthy, but you know what? I feel liberated. I get to wake up every day and do something I love. I get to work with people that I like. Educators. I am liberated today because this teacher right here, best teacher I ever had. Now, can you find me in the picture? Guess which one is me? So sure. That's me right there. I know what you're thinking. Thank God they invented contacts, right? Here's a catch. In 3rd grade, I wanted to change my name from Luis, ready for this, to Luigi. I was going through assimilation blues. Beverly Daniel Tatum talks about this. I wanted to be more mainstream. So somehow in my head, Luigi was more mainstream. My teacher, a white woman from Wisconsin who spoke no Spanish, called me in during recess, held my hand in the most caring way, and said, "Sweetie, you're not Italian. Your parents are from Ecuador, and your name is Luis. Why are you changing it to Luigi? Luis is a good name, and I know that you mostly speak Spanish. And then she said this, ready? But I'm going to teach you English. I'm just going to ask that you teach me Spanish, so that together we become two of the smartest people at this school. Because when you know 2 languages, that's twice as smart as people who only know 1 language. She lowered my affective filter. She used scaffolding strategies before it was cool to use scaffolding strategies. She made sure that she empowered our parents. And she led a movement at our school that more kids that look like me be allowed at our school. Because I went to a private Catholic school, right? I will never forget Miss Whalen. So here's what I want to remind you of. I love this part of your mission statement. Every student by name. But I want to remind you that when you get a Luis, his name is not Louis. When you get a Carlos, it's not Charles. When you get a Maria, it's not Mary. When you get an Estefania, it's not Stephanie. And when you get a Lourdes, it's not Lulu. Now, if the kid really wants to be called that, that's different. But don't be changing names that were given to us, because that is part of who we are, our identity. The other thing I want to remind you is that words matter, yes or no? Yes. So maybe it's time we change English learners to HTV, halfway to bilingual. Imagine that. How many HTVs did you get? I got 8. Is that 9? Oh, cool. Or multilingual learners. Or how about this powerful term? Emergent bilinguals. Tell me that's not powerful. You have been an absolute wonderful audience. I want to thank hardworking teachers who after long days still show up. Thank you very much. But I want to challenge you not to experience hallucination. Do something with this. Our kids are depending on it. Thank you for welcoming me to your community. Have a blessed rest of the year. You are in my thoughts and prayers. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to take a picture now.
Yep.
So, okay, thank you.
Can you hear me? Oh, it's working. So if you are interested in taking a group picture, we're going to come up on the stage. Anyone is welcome. And yeah, let's do it.